Hey, it's Sam from Sugar Spun Run, and today I'm showing you how to make the perfect scones. This is an old favorite recipe of mine, a classic. It really produces the butteriest, most tender, melt in your mouth scones. I love this recipe and I'm so excited to be making a new video for it. First thing I want you to do is get your oven preheating to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. Make sure you have a rack in the center of your oven because that's where we will be baking our scones. All right, second thing. For this recipe, I highly recommend using a food processor. It's going to give you the quickest results. It is simply the easiest way to make the scones, and you're going to have the best results and the best formed scones with this method. Over on my blog post, I do include notes. If you don't have a food processor, you can make this using a box grater or pastry cutter instead, but for best results, use your food processor. All right, you really don't need a lot of ingredients to make scones. We're going to be starting with 2 cups of all-purpose flour. I'm going to spoon this into the basin of my food processor. 2 cups are 250 grams. If you're using a scale, which you really should be, drop the rest of that in there. Now, when I think of scones, I like a sweeter scone. So of course I add sugar. I'm adding 1/4 cup of granulated sugar. That's 50 grams of granulated sugar into the basin of my food processor. For savory scones, you can certainly cut down on that sugar level. This is what I like. Reducing the sugar will give you a scone that's a little bit less moist and tender, but it will still work. It'll just be a little bit more like a biscuit in my opinion. We're also going to be adding 2 teaspoons of baking powder and a 1/2 teaspoon of table salt. Sprinkle that right in. All right, let's put the lid on this. We're just going to pulse everything together a couple times so everything's nicely combined. All right, next ingredient that you're going to need is butter. You need a 1/2 cup or 8 tablespoons or 113 grams of very cold unsalted butter. I put this in the freezer for at least 15, maybe 20 minutes before I begin because the colder it is, the better your results are going to be. Now, regular butter that you get from the store will work fine for this recipe, but to elevate the scones and give them an even better flavor, if you can get your hands on European butter, this is a great time to use it. Now, before I add this into my food processor, I'm going to cut it into about tablespoon-sized pieces. I'd say these are probably a little smaller than tablespoon-sized pieces, but the point is don't throw the whole stick in there. And we are just going to scatter these over the top. All right, let's put our lid back on. And we are going to pulse, so don't just blend everything. We're going to pulse in like 1-second intervals until the butter is nicely cut up into the other ingredients. I don't want to see the butter disappear completely. I like to see some like chocolate chip sized pieces remaining when I'm finished pulsing. How many pulses is this? Let me count. All right, that was 7 Mississippi. So I did 7 1-second pulses, and I'm actually pretty happy with how this looks. Your mileage may vary depending on your particular food processor, but what I want you to see here is that the butter is nicely cut up into the mixture, but you still have pieces remaining. Let's see, we've got a little piece of butter here. Don't want to handle it too much because I really want my ingredients to stay nice and cold. Otherwise, my scones are more likely to topple and melt and just kind of look funky. All right, next thing we need is a 1/2 cup of heavy cream. Again, you want this to be super cold, so I just now pulled this out of the fridge, and I'm going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract to this. Just kind of swirl it around a little bit. And we're going to just drizzle this over my other ingredients. And you may notice this recipe does not use egg. That is by design, not because I was trying to make an eggless recipe. I am up to my ears in eggs right now, but because it gives you the best results. It really just gives you a nice, tender, buttery texture. And I found that eggs actually took away from the texture and made the scones, it's just not as good. So yes, there are no eggs in here, that's right. So now we're going to pulse everything together again a couple times until the dough starts to cling together. And again, I'll show you what that looks like. All right, let's take a look here. So this was like 25 1-second pulses, and you can see things are starting to cling together, but we don't have like a solid dough yet. I don't want to go quite that far, but still looks a little crumbly, but if you were to press it together, it certainly sticks together. All right, so scones, we want to work pretty quickly. So we want to keep this dough nice and cold. And we're going to remove this blade because it's sharp. We don't want to cut ourselves. And lightly dust a clean surface with some flour. And we'll turn our dough out into this. And at this point is where you would add any add-ins you want to use if you're making something besides a plain vanilla scone. So if you wanted to add nuts or fruit, I would recommend frozen fruit. That's much easier to incorporate into the dough than non-frozen fruit, or chocolate. I am going to add some chocolate today because I love chocolate, but also because I want to give you a visual of what adding that looks like. About a half cup of add-in seems to be a good amount for this amount of dough. So I'm going to just sprinkle some of those chocolate chips over that now, and I'm going to form this dough into a disc, something resembling a disc anyway. I want it to be cohesive and form together. Don't want to overhandle it because my hands are warm. If this gets too warm, it can affect your scones negatively. So then I'm going to fold the dough over itself. This is a lamination process, which is going to give us those buttery, tender layers. And I am going to add some more chocolate chips. We'll flatten the dough again. Rotate the dough 90 degrees, flatten it over itself again, and we're going to repeat this until we folded it over itself like 5 times. But a word with add-ins, using fresh fruit can get really messy. Frozen fruit works better because it's still solid. Make sure it's nice and cold, but also just know that when you start to add add-ins to it, the scones look a little less uniform after they've baked. This is okay. They taste amazing, and that's the important thing, but they look a lot cleaner when you just make plain scones. And I think this is 5 times. So now I'm going to form this into a disc. It's about 1 inch thick by about 6 inches wide. Try to smooth those edges some. And we're not going to worry about cracks on the dough or things looking totally smooth and uniform, because honestly, it's better for the dough to look a little bit more rustic and stay a little bit colder than for us to overhandle it to make it completely smooth. All right, so I'm going to cut this into 8 wedges. And when you're cutting your scones, press straight down with your knife. Do not saw into it. If you saw into it, they're a lot more likely to topple over. This is the same thing with my biscuits. Like I said, the two are very similar. And I have a parchment paper lined baking sheet here. I'm going to arrange my scones on this. And I do give them a little breathing room between the scones. Now, if your dough got too warm, you can pop it in the freezer for like 10 or 15 minutes before you bake the scones. That'll be fine. And one thing I like to do before I bake them is I brush them with a little bit of heavy cream, just a light brushing. And then I sprinkle them with a little bit of sugar because, like I said, I like my scones sweet. You could do a vanilla glaze on them. I have a recipe for that, but I really just like a little bit of sugar. And of course, some people just like them plain. It's fine too. This is just regular granulated sugar. It's like, you know, in muffins, when they have that like crispy sugar topping, it's just so much better than when they don't. Same for scones. All right, we're gonna take these over to our 375 Fahrenheit preheated oven, which I believe is a 190 Celsius oven, and they're going to need to bake for about 15 to 17 minutes. Plain scones are usually done in 15. Scones that have a lot of add-ins, especially if it's something moist like fruit, are going to take a little bit longer to bake. Good way to tell that they're done is the sides should look cooked through, and they will be beginning to turn a nice light golden brown around the edges. And of course, you do want to let these cool some before you dig in, but in my opinion, scones are always best served at least a little bit warm. These are nice, and we've got some beautifully rustic ones, which I warned you might happen, especially when we're including add-ins, but they are so good, and I think you're going to absolutely love them. If you try this recipe, or if you have tried this recipe, because it's been around a while, let me know what you think. I really do always love hearing from you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. All right, let's break into one of these scones so you can see how that looks. Oh yeah, I love these. That is excellent.